Welcome back to A2 Audio. Today on the channel, I just kind of want to give you guys an update, the final video on this Harman Kardon 930 Twin that I restored. And so I did a lot of work to this receiver and it looks great and it sounds even better. But I just wanted to give you guys kind of a rundown on what we did to this receiver. And then I'm going to take you guys in and do some close-up pictures so you can see what the case looks like and what the final product of the restoration looks like. So to start off with, we built a custom case for this. And so this is a one-of-a-kind case. As far as I know, there's not another case that exists like this. And so what made this case special is that the case that came originally with this was a metal case. Now, Harman Kardon did make a wood case for it. However, that wood case actually sat on top of this metal plate here, faceplate, and it kind of left the edge of that plywood or that case exposed, and it really just was not a very pretty looking case to me. And so I wanted to improve upon that, and this is what I came up with, and that way this actually sits flush on the sides and on the top with the faceplate itself, and I think it turned out really, really awesome and looks really good, and I think the new owner of this is going to be really excited about it. And so those cases that Harman Kardon put out, I guess they were very, very rare, and they're really hard to come by, and obviously after 50 years, most of those cases are either broken, non-existent, or in very bad shape. So this may be a case that I add to my lineup on my website at some point, but honestly, there's just not that big a demand for them, so I don't know if I'll mess with it or not, if this will just be a one-off that I do. The next thing we did is we replaced all the fuse LEDs here in the dial indicator with LEDs, taking out those old bulbs. And then we replaced all the indicator lights. And so this thing has a whole bunch of indicator lights. And so we've got the LED that's in the power switch, we've got the stereo light, we've got the dial indicator light, and then all the different functions for the auxiliary, the phono, they all have individual lights. And on this thing, since it's a very small unit, there's not really a lot of room to work inside, so it's kind of a pain in the butt, but you just have to take your time and be patient, and then it turned out really well. And so everything is all now LEDs, which means that we're going to be eliminating that heat that comes from the regular incandescent bulbs, and then give some longevity to this unit as well, with not making any of those components, those plastic parts that hold those pieces in, last a lot longer. And then hopefully we won't be having to replace these LEDs for a long time. So the other big thing I did was I replaced the signal meter. When this unit was brought to me, the signal meter was inoperable. It was not working, and so I was able to find one on eBay or Fleabay and get that and swap it out and get that working. I set the DC offset, and so if you remember my previous video, there is no way to adjust the DC offset in this. There's not like a variable resistor in there that you can use. So I had to actually just kind of, by trial and error, plug and chug different resistors until I got the DC offset where I wanted it to be. And I wanted to be as close to zero as possible. When I got this unit in, each channel was either 100 millivolts or 80, I think 82 millivolts on the one channel. And so that was way higher than what I wanted to be. And I could tell when I would turn this on, basically I would hear the popping in my speakers. And so I knew something was going on with that, and I wanted to track it down. Additionally, because this unit's kind of unique, when I had it hooked up to my dim bulb tester, every time that I would plug it in and power it on with the speakers engaged, it would actually light up that bright bulb, and then it would basically kind of give off a false alarm that there was a short in the unit. And so at first that kind of threw me for a loop, because I thought there really was a short, and I spent a lot of time trying to track it down to try to figure out what was going on. But then as I did more research into that, I realized that this was just something funky with this unit being with the twin transformers. It was just something that it did. When it engaged, it drew a lot of power, and if you engaged it with the speakers on the dim bulb tester, it would just kind of give a false positive as is your short. If you plugged it into the wall, it doesn't do that. There is no short. Part of that, though, was that DC offset being so high. So as I plugged and chugged different resistors, I was able to get that DC offset practically to zero on both channels. And so that required me basically kind of making a resistor to get the value exactly I needed on one channel, and then swapping out another resistor on the other channel to ensure that I was equal on both sides, the right and left of that channel. So next I checked the idle current and got that where it needed to be. And I want to say on this unit, if I remember correctly, I think that was around 15 millivolts. Don't quote me on that, I can't remember. And then I fixed the low cut switch. So when this unit came in, the low cut switch here that basically kind of takes out some of the bass was all the wires going to that switch were cut and just left in place, and so that switch was inoperable. Additionally, on that switch there are a couple capacitors that join it to the high filter, and those were been degrading or falling off. I'm not sure when. So I had to repair all that and then basically lengthen those wires since they'd been cut and get them back onto that low cut switch. I think the reason that low cut switch was taken out, I think that it's kind of a pain in the butt to clean those switches. And so you'd have to take off, actually I pretty much had to take off the whole faceplate, the whole metal covering that comes out just to get access to that switch so I can be able to pull it out. So it's kind of a pain in the butt. So I got that switch out and I was really able to get a good clean in there. And since I did that and I hooked everything back up and it's working flawlessly, it's doing exactly what it needs to do. The next big thing I had to do, guys, was an FM alignment. And this was an absolute pain in the butt with this receiver, mostly because the service manual is either omits steps or it just plain tells you the wrong thing to do. And so you kind of have to, before you can even do an FM alignment on this, you really have to figure out what all the components do. You know, and so this is at the beginning of really circuit board being designed and whatnot. So then pretty much everything had a separate circuit board. And in a way that makes it easy because you know that, hey, I'm going to work on this circuit board. It's going to do X, Y, or Z. This other circuit board does this. And so in a way that makes it easier, but when you don't have a service manual to tell you what the parts are, or if it's identifying parts incorrectly, then you really have to do a lot of trial and error and guesswork to try to get it done. But after spending a few hours doing that, actually about 4 or 5 hours doing that, I was able to get this thing working really good. Able to tune the stereo circuit, because it does have a stereo circuit to trigger whether that stereo light comes on, not just the multiplex circuit, but it also has an individual circuit based on voltage of when it sends the, basically kind of when it grounds out that stereo light and allows that LED to come on. And so I was able to do that. And then the next I had to do was the same thing for the muting circuit, because it has a separate FM muting circuit that basically does the same thing, telling the stereo basically when there's a strong enough signal, it's in stereo, so letting the stereo recognize when it gets a stereo signal and tuning out everything else on the dial. So after I was able to do that, I basically, this dial indicator was actually warped, and the reason it was warped was because that incandescent light had been doing what it does, getting hot, and it kind of warped that plastic and melted a piece of it, and because of that melt, it had basically twisted that dial indicator. And so what I did to fix that, I couldn't replace the dial indicator, so what I had to do was basically where it had melted and bulged out, I basically had to get a file or sandpaper and sand it back smooth, and then fit it back in there straight. So now that's straight up and down. Looks a lot better, because it was pretty obvious when I first got this unit that it was just, you know, way bent, and it just didn't look good at all, in my opinion. From there, I had some random fixings of wires. Whoever had been in the stereo before, probably the same guy that cut the wires to the low filter, had done some kind of shoddy work when it came to some of the other lighting wires and whatnot, and didn't, you know, had left some things exposed, so I put heat shrink around those and whatnot. And then last, you know, I just gave it a good cleaning, and so this faceplate had some a lot of dirt on it. The knobs were really dirty, and so I just gave it a really good cleaning. And you can see my faceplate cleaning video on that in my channel. And basically I let it soak in some simple green, especially the knobs, you know, because the knobs, as you can see, they have these very fine, intricate channels on all the knobs, and there's a lot of dirt in there. So I let those soak for a few days actually in simple green, and everything came out really well. So a lot of time went in this unit. I think now that I've had some experience with it, made some notes. If I ever come across one again, I feel a lot more confident working on this unit. But again, you know, the service manual is really kind of the Achilles heel, I feel like, on this unit, because it identifies so many things incorrectly, and so you'll start working on something thinking you're doing the right thing when in actuality the service manual is incorrect. So I'm going to go ahead and take you guys in closer so you can see some close-up photos of what the stereo looks like. I think it turned out great, and so, but I'll let you guys be the judge, and then we'll play it and let you guys hear what it sounds like too. Come on. All right, one more thing before we do the close-up photos is that you see that this dial is completely lit right now. But one thing that's about this unit is that when you go to either the aux or the phonos, it actually turns this dial off. And so that was probably a really good thing when these had incandescent bulbs in there, because they'd be just generating heat for no reason, damaging the plastic behind there and warping that plastic. So it's probably a good thing. But now that we have LEDs in here, you know, I don't really see any reason why we couldn't do a fix to make sure that this stayed on the whole time. And so that wasn't something that I did in this unit because I kept it original. But if it was me personally, I think I would probably do that, because I think seeing that dial, it just makes it look cool. And now that we got LEDs in there, the heater is not going to be a problem. So just so you guys know that it works, we'll go ahead and turn the speakers on. And so that's the FM. And so we'll go ahead and get this started for our unit. And so I'm going to switch it to auxiliary, and then you guys can hear what it sounds like. And we'll play our favorite tune now and go from there. All right, so what'd you think? Sounds good and looks good, doesn't it? And so I'm really happy with how this turned out. Really happy how this case looks. I think it really adds a lot to it and kind of finishes the package. And this is, like I said, it's going to be a one-of-a-kind case. And I think it just brings it all together and really makes it look sharp. And so I want to give a special shout out to Greg, who brought this unit to me. I appreciate you trusting in me to restore this unit and give me an opportunity to work on it. I definitely learned a lot from this unit, and I had some fun along the way. You know, now that I can say that looking back on hindsight, other times when I was in the midst of it and I couldn't figure something out, I was getting a little frustrated, but you know, it was definitely a great learning opportunity, Greg. So I really appreciate you bringing it to me and allowing me to learn from it. And so this unit's in really good shape. Hopefully it serves its owner very well over the next years and years to come. I know Greg has expressed some thoughts about passing this on to his grandkids, and I think that's really, really cool, and I think that's really, really important that we share these things with the younger generations, because if we don't, these are going to wind up in the recycling bin in the trash, because they won't know the value of these units. They won't understand what it feels like to hit a switch and not a button on their phone. And so I think it's super important, guys, that we bring the younger crowd into this hobby so they can see the added value that these units bring of having the sound quality. Just the quality alone, I think, is just blowing you away. And this particular unit is really kind of a sleeper. You know, you would never think this unit that's only rated for a few watts, it's not like it's a monster receiver or anywhere near that. But I hooked this up to my Pioneer HPM 100s, the 200 watt version. I mean, it sounds great. It sounds like a unit that's putting out 100 watts. And so I think it's really, really a very, very nice unit to have restored and a very nice unit to have in your collection. And so again, if you're one of those people that have that collection, make sure you're bringing that younger generation in, and so they can see the value and pass on that vintage love. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. Make sure you hit that bell, and that way you'll get notified when new video content is uploaded. I try to upload at least once a week, Lord willing. So I appreciate everybody who's already subscribed, and I appreciate all my followers, and I appreciate all the comments we get. And so, as you know, if you're leaving comments, I try to answer all my comments and try to respond to everybody. And so I was away for this past week, and so I was a little lagging behind, but I think I'm caught up now. So as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.